Do people exercise naked? Your 6-year-old just asked you that question. What do you say? Any parent of young kids know that kids will ask the most off-the-wall questions, and it will send our adult brains spiraling. As adults, we're thinking, did my kid just see porn? Did somebody intentionally show my kid porn telling them it's exercise? How in the world did my kid get this idea about exercising naked? I was a sex ed teacher and I saw firsthand in the classroom how curious kids are by the questions that they asked. And the majority of the time, the questions weren't anything nefarious. It was just that the kids just didn't have the skills to be able to dissect the question and the answer yet. Now I teach parents just like you how to answer their kids' sex questions in a medically accurate and age-appropriate way that encourages your kids' curiosity so that they keep coming back to you with their questions. Now tell me if this is you. Many times parents will just actively avoid trying to bring up any topic that is sex-related. Or if their kid did ask them a sex-related question, the parents will distract them or try to do something in order to delay giving them an answer because they just don't know how to provide age-appropriate information. The problem here with that approach is that the kid is still curious and they still have that question. And if you're not going to give them the answer, they're going to seek out the answer elsewhere. And now you don't know where they're going to seek out information, and you don't know if the information is going to be age appropriate or if they're going to get misinformation. So if you're nodding your head and you're saying, yeah, that's kind of me. I feel uncomfortable when my kid asks me a sex question, take a few moments and watch this video. And even though we're going to be focusing on answering the question, do people exercise naked? The tips here can be applied to sex questions in general. First thing we're going to do is focus on how to react when your kid asks you, do people exercise naked? Second, what do you say when your kid asks, do people exercise naked? And third, is exercising naked more beneficial than wearing activewear? Actually, with number 3, I have no idea. That is not my area of expertise. So we're just going to focus on 1 and 2. So number 1, how do you react? So the first step here is to seek clarification. And you can do this by just simply asking them, have you seen people exercising naked? But that sounds accusatory, and your kid is probably going to feel like they're getting in trouble for asking you a question. And that is the complete opposite of what you're trying to do here when you're seeking clarification. Now, of course, you want to know, have they seen people exercising naked, or where did this idea come from? How did they get it, and why are they asking you? But instead of sounding accusatory, you need to try and build connection. Show interest in their question when you're seeking this clarification. So here's an example of what a response would look like that builds connection while asking the same question. That's a good question. You know, I don't exercise naked, but maybe some people do. Have you seen people exercising naked? Okay, tell me, did you notice a difference? Like that first way of asking, have you seen people exercising naked? That sounds more like an interrogation. Whereas the second way of asking sounds more like building a conversation. And that's what you want to build. You want to build a conversation. Nobody likes to be interrogated, right? Not you, not me, and definitely not your 6-year-old. Your reaction to their question is going to set the tone for how much information they're going to share with you next. If your tone makes them feel like they're in trouble for asking this question, they're going to shut off and they're not going to dig their hole any deeper because they don't want to be told off. So strive for building connection when seeking clarification. But I totally feel where you're coming from, parents. As one parent to another, we've got adult brains. And in our adult brain, we are jumping to conclusions when we hear questions like that. And it's very worrisome to us as parents. And this is simply because our adult brain will jump straight to sexual connotations because we've already gone through puberty and we know what sex is and we're aware of sexual innuendos. So we jump immediately to thinking that it's sex related, but it's not the same for our kid. To our kid, they are not even in the same ballpark as us. All right, let me give you 2 examples of what I mean by this, by your kid not being in the same ballpark. I had a parent tell me that their kid asked them, why are all the dancers naked? And I'm sure you're thinking like what those parents were thinking, what do you mean dancing naked, right? So in their adult brain, like in your adult brain, you think naked dancers, you're probably thinking, did they just see stripping? But when the parents sought clarification as to what do you mean, are they all dancing naked? What they were referring to was ballet. And the people on the stage were all wearing leotards that were skin toned. And so when you looked at it on the phone screen from far away, it did kind of look like they were naked. But once you got closer up, you could see that they were wearing ballet leotards. Another example that a parent told me was that their kid told them it was really weird that the man at the park runs around naked. Any parent hearing just that statement, all would have worrisome thoughts, right? Like, what is going on at the park, right? Is this man just running around flashing kids? That's what we think in our adult brain. But when we seek clarification, we find out that there was a man running around the park without a shirt. He wasn't interacting with the kids. The kids just noticed this man training for a marathon shirtless. And to them, shirtless equaled nakedness. So they just put those two together. Those are just two examples of how a question from a 6-year-old could be misinterpreted in our adult brain. But let me be very clear. It is important to not dismiss a child's question just because you think they've misinterpreted something. There are predators who use a child's lack of education to sexually abuse them. And it's within the realm of possibilities that they could use the term exercising naked in order to muddy the waters in a child's way of thinking. So not only is it important to seek out clarification in order to better explain something to your child, but also to rule out any potential for child sexual abuse. So that was the first step. How do you react when your kid asks you this question? Now, what do you say? Now, the rates of child sexual abuse are really high. And so if you do find out that it is a child sexual abuser showing your child porn and calling it exercise, you will need to report that to the authorities and they will guide you on the next steps. Now, on the flip side of that, if you seek out clarification and it is not abuse, is simply a misinterpretation of what they saw, you can easily help them process it. At 6 years old, you can simply clarify what nakedness means. Now, this is going to be different all around the world. In some cultures, nakedness is when you are completely naked with no clothes on. In other cultures, it is considered naked to be showing your skin and hair. So you can explain these cultural differences to your child. And here's an example of something that you could potentially say. In some cultures, a person is considered naked when they have on no clothes at all. In other cultures, a person might be considered naked if they're showing like their hair or their nipples, their belly button, or their legs. In our culture, if a person is just not wearing a shirt, we would say that they are shirtless or topless instead of naked. As a society, we've agreed that nakedness is considered private, and we all agree to wear clothes when at the store or the pool or at school. So exercising naked might be something some people do in private, not out in public. Remember, at this age, you're keeping your answers to their questions very simple. You're letting them know that different cultures have different views around what is considered naked. But your immediate reaction is really important in showing them that you are happy that they've asked this question and that you want them to come back to you with more questions. And if you've been following me for a long time, you know that your kid is picking up signals from you all the time, whether they are verbal or nonverbal, on whether or not they can come back to you with more questions. And if you haven't been following me and you're a parent of young kids, I guarantee you your kid is going to ask you a sex question at some point in time. So go on and hit that subscribe button. It is free, so you can start getting tips on how to have these talks. Now, there are some instances of people exercising naked, okay? So don't be that parent that just jumps to the one end of the spectrum and says, nobody ever does that, okay? Because this actually happened to me last year during the lead up to the Olympics and Paralympics. If your kids' school was like mine, a lot of the teachers were going through the history of the games. And one of the nuggets of information that they shared about the very first Olympic Games was that the athletes all competed naked. This, of course, was very interesting to young minds, and it caught many parents, including myself, off guard when their kids came home and said, "Did you know people exercise naked?" Here's another reason we don't want to be jumping to conclusions as parents. There was a really popular Disney movie that came out in 2016 called Zootopia. In the movie, there are no humans, so all of the animals in the animal kingdom live and work like humans. So in one of the scenes, the main character is a cop and they're doing an investigation, and they end up having to go to a naturalist club. And in the naturalist club, all of the animals wanted to go back to their animal roots and therefore did not want to wear any clothes over their fur. And during that scene of the movie at the naturalist club, the animals were indeed exercising naked. And so, of course, to a young kid, they could get the idea, well, if the animals exercise naked, do people exercise naked? And if you're not watching that Disney movie with them and have forgotten that there's that scene, you might get the question, do people exercise naked? And this is where, as parents, it's so important in our adult brain, we do not jump to conclusions and we seek clarification first. And when we go to seek clarification, we do so in a tone that is more conversational and less interrogation style. We want to eliminate the possibility that our child is being groomed and then share the range of beliefs from culture to culture around nakedness. If you're new here, I'm Kathleen and I make videos for parents on how to answer their kids' sex questions. If your kid asks you a question that caught you off guard, let me know the question in the comments. You never know, I might take that question and make a video right here answering it for you. But if you don't have the luxury of time to wait for me to answer questions here on YouTube, you can check out my Top Talks guide, where I give you everything you need to know in order to have the where do babies come from, the sex, masturbation, puberty, and porn talk. Now, I know most parents want to answer their kids' sex questions in a medically accurate and age-appropriate way, but you don't have time to go through a whole guide. Right now, if you do purchase the guide, you will get 85 questions and answers that kids ask between the ages of 4 and 12. So it's a great time to get the guide. Not only will you get chock full of information, but you will also be prepared on these common questions that kids ask, and you'll know how to answer them as well. I would love to be able to reach more parents with this information. So if you're finding this video to be helpful, go on and give it a like or leave a comment or share it with another parent who you think might find it helpful as well.